Hello everybody, I'm Charlie Savoy.
I'm Elsie Parmar.
And today we'll be talking about disability identity, implicit and explicit attitudes. So I'll start us off. So today we'll just begin by talking about what identity is. And identity is those characteristics that make people distinct and denote individuality. A couple things to remember about identity is that they're complex and they're intersectional. And they come in different contexts, such as race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, etc. So today, one of those contexts of identity that we'll be talking about is disability identity. And disability identity is possessing favorable or beneficial self-beliefs regarding one's own disability. And disability identity can range from low to high, depending on how strongly one feels connected with that aspect of their identity. So if somebody has a lesser known disability or not as noticeable of a disability, they might not feel as connected with that aspect of their identity as somebody who has a more pervasive or inhibitory disability. So today, throughout the rest of the conversation, we'll be referencing people with disabilities as PWDs for short. So going along with disability identity, there's some negative aspects to disability identity. And this is when PWDs are affected by familiarity with the stigmas, prejudices, and discriminations. And unfortunately, these can cause what we like to call stereotype threat, or what Dr. Dana Dunn, in her book, The Social Psychology of Disability, called stereotype threat, which is when these stereotypes can actually manifest within the person with disabilities and affect them significantly and noticeably. Fortunately, there are some positive elements of disability, and according to Gill, the formation of these positive identities comes in 4 stages. The first stage being belongingness, where somebody with a disability understands that they're also a part of the greater world. Step 2 is coming home, where they kind of accept that disability identity part of themselves as well. Step 3 is coming together, where they kind of merge these 2 identities. And 4 is coming out, as both a person of the world and a person with a disability, and they're accepting of both of those parts of themselves, and they can live their lives happily. So some things that influence both positive and negative elements of disability include these things that we have here. So the onset of disability is a really interesting topic. Somebody who acquired a disability later in life might not feel as connected with the disability aspect of their life as somebody who has acquired it much earlier in life or was born with a disability. Some narrative approaches to understanding can help PWDs feel more connected with the disability part of their life. Discussing and reading about other people with disabilities can make one feel more connected with that aspect of themselves. The context of disability, who you surround yourself with, the environment in which you're in can also influence how you feel about your disability. And another thing that we really want to kind of stress today is the outsider views and how people who are not in the in-group of disability have major effects on those with disabilities. So Elsie will be coming up right now to talk a little bit more about that.
All right, so what are these outsider views? These outsider views are based upon attitudes, and attitudes are thoughts or feelings that you base based upon your belief systems or your values. So each one of us has different belief systems and values based upon how we were raised. So we each have implicit and explicit attitudes. So implicit attitudes are ones that you're kind of unaware of. Those are ones that you don't really know you have, but you base them off of your values anyway. And explicit attitudes are ones that you have that you are very adamant about and you know that you have them. So an example of this by Dr. Charlesworth and Dr. Banaji in their study recently published is that gay marriage had not been legalized before 2012. So before that time, it might have been normal to oppose gay marriage, and that would have been an explicit attitude, and implicitly people might have also been opposed to it. But recently it has been legalized, so it might still be implicitly unfavored by many people, while explicitly, since it's legal, it's not as opposed as it used to be. So why is it important to understand explicit and implicit attitudes? Well, people with disabilities, as Charlie mentioned, they have developed attitudes about themselves, and not only that, we also have thoughts about people with disabilities. And this is essential to understanding that disability identity exists on a personal level and also on an external level. So in Dr. Charlesworth and Dr. Banaji's study, we can see that they studied the explicit and implicit attitudes people had towards people with disabilities between 2007 and 2016. And it's an interesting pattern. On this graph right here, it's kind of linear, and this is the graph that shows the implicit attitudes people displayed towards people with disabilities. And it's relatively linear, and people haven't really changed in how they viewed people with disabilities. But explicitly, people have seemed to be more accepting of people with disabilities. Their negative emotions related to people with disabilities have decreased. And this is an interesting finding because of what Charlie mentioned about disability identity and how it can be different based upon when an onset of a disability comes. So going back to what she said, I believe this quote summed it up perfectly, and you can read it for yourself, but it goes back to how it's essential to understanding that people with disabilities defined disability for themselves, and their identity is defined for themselves, but we as outsiders may have feelings and attitudes that may go against what people with disabilities are thinking of themselves. And this is essential to understanding that our thoughts still impact people with disabilities. And thank you.